Hi, my name's Simon Baker. I'm the founder of the Online Marketplaces Group. I recently chatted with Malcolm Myers, the founder of European Internet Ventures, about the opportunities for marketplaces in a post-pandemic world. We started the conversation by chatting about, is it possible to buy primary and secondary real estate online?
And do you think that is those second home, holiday home, investment properties? That
I
would be
think
the
that'll
major segments?
I think that'll happen first.
Yep.
But why shouldn't it be possible for me to? And there are already companies in different parts of the world trying to make the transaction part happen securely online. So the title transfer and payment happening
Yep.
online. Um, and if that's somehow guaranteed by a platform with a big balance sheet and a credible guarantee, then that element, I think, of uncertainty that inhibits a transaction goes away. And
Okay.
then the question is, can I see and feel and really appreciate the premises enough? And there I'm still questioning whether if you're going to buy something, you probably want to go there. But there's so many ways you can arrange for, simple visits. You can give people, doors which unlock for a certain period of time with a pass key. So there, I think, it would be possible to really minimize the contact with any intermediary, any physical intermediary, in order to get a classic home bought and sold. I mean, I think the role of human contact in a transaction is just designed to disappear. I mean, I would spend a bit of time looking at medical marketplaces, is wanting to expand my repertoire at a time of change. And
Yes.
it's fascinating, all these the huge companies like Babylon Health. But what's fascinating is that what you would traditionally say, I have to physically show up in a clinic and see a doctor about. A lot of that stuff is now being done on an app, and some of it's being done through AI to actually qualify what exactly the issue is, and sometimes it then requires a video style interaction. So if something as personal as going to the doctor can be, to a very significant extent, turned into a virtual experience, why should what aspect of buying a home still needs a face-to-face physical intermediary? And when it's no longer a face-to-face physical intermediary, going back to the earlier point, it may be harder for those intermediaries to actually really substantiate their value.
So then, when you roll the clock forward and you start to think about what the marketplaces look like after the virus has passed, or at least the lockdown provisions have passed, you think they're going to really embrace these changes and accelerate into a new world?
I think that we're already seeing some agencies who are trying to build a more online offer,
Yep.
and at the same, so video tours, for example. It is a very perverse concept of a virtual viewing that has to have a time attached to it.
Yes.
But certainly, that aspect, I think, is here to stay. And I
Yep.
think we're going to see more generally that more and more individuals are realizing that online is a simpler, more convenient way to do things. So there are more people ordering their groceries online now than ever before. And I think this idea of, why should I spend 2 hours to have a first viewing of a house when I could have a very detailed video run through? I would expect consumers to become more demanding, and so request, whether it's of the agency or of the marketplace platform, a quality of material on the around the listing, which is simply much better than what we have got used to so far. Which is the property transaction ready? That due diligence that's done before you buy an apartment or a home, that can be done before somebody is actually prepared to pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. And if you see that the home has already been effectively had that due diligence in terms of title and other issues, structural issues and so on, if that's all been done up front, then it makes it one step easier to ultimately click a button to buy that property.
Yes.
You can imagine, a premium service being available for certain types of listings. Maybe, again, the interesting question is an agent still representing those listings, or is it a product which is offered to owner occupiers to say, look, we have a special fully remote service which we can offer you. as an alternative to using a traditional agent.
And is this an opportunity for the Purplebricks of the world to really get a lead or not a lead, but really push their services forward?
So, as I said at some of your conferences, I think the services offered by these tech-enabled brokerages are definitely a step in the right direction. And yes, you're absolutely right. There are companies in this space today who are, for example, doing this, pre-checked for purchase style stamp of approval.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge which the tech-enabled brokerages have is traffic and liquidity, right? And that's not going to change. If anything, their traffic and liquidity is going to be has been affected probably more even than that of the leading portals. So I think, yes, they'll be better and better at offering the service, and will probably need to, but their unit economics still don't look great. So unless they can find a way of getting sellers to raise the ticket which they're prepared to pay, I don't see them being able to embrace such a business model without a lot more capital.
Yeah.
If this was China, somebody would be able to raise $500 million to boost up the traffic volumes on one of these tech-enabled brokerages or something like it, and it would be eating the lunch of the portals. But if you analyze the sort of the funding environment in Europe, it has not embraced these what I call these sort of 4.0 models in it with anything like the same volume of capital.
Right. Would it make sense for a Zoopla and a Purplebricks to merge?
It would have made sense 2 years ago. I think it makes even more sense now.
Right. I agree completely. And I think now that Zoopla's in private hands, it's probably and I think Purplebricks is probably going through a bit of pain at the moment, like everyone is. I would think that now's probably a great opportunity to bring the two together.
It would be an amazing opportunity, but clearly, Silver Lake would have to have the stomach for seeing those. Presumably, some agents would suddenly decide to desert Zoopla as a matter of principle. But as we've discussed on previous occasions, why should, as long as an agent, as long as I'm getting a quality of lead for my monthly fee that I couldn't get on Facebook or somewhere else, why would I just turn my back on a platform that's been providing me decent leads until today? So I think with a bit of care, one could potentially have one's own label brokerage in-house, while still having third parties as well on the platform. And that would be a fascinating step forward.
Yeah, it's no different to a supermarket, right?
Well,
they've got their own.
Amazon does the same thing, right? Amazon has its own stock, and it allows third-party stock to be on its platform under the same such results.
So do you have any other sort of thoughts around where this all ends up? Are there any sort of left field options you think are going to emerge after the crisis?
I mentioned I spent quite a lot of time looking around the world at what's going on. I think in a way it's too easy just to talk about the quoted Anglo-Saxon property portals because, for obvious reasons, the quality and the immediacy of data. And we forget that this combination of high price point, subscription fee-based portals supporting an ecosystem of agents is only for a largely purchase transaction-based, owner-occupier-based real estate market. This is going to look more and more antiquated, in my view, as time goes on, and that may also be accelerated by coronavirus. But it's anyway a trend which was happening before we were hit by this. You look at where the money's been going in China, and the biggest sector of all in real estate is what I'd call curated long-term rentals, where a lot of the comfort which if you're a middle market or a young professional, the quality, the type of home which you are able to rent, that whole experience can be dramatically improved by a portal that not only links owner and tenant, but also verifies the property. And then what's interesting about, for example, companies like Z-Rooms, which is the biggest one in China, they're also putting they're taking care of decoration and furniture for a lot of their different ranges. So you get a degree of standardization and let's call it minimum quality. Now, from a European perspective, you might say, I want individuality, da, 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 da. But if you're talking about mass market apartments, 50K, 100K, there's not so much individuality you can get anyway in those price points. And to have companies which are also assuring a quality of standard of furnishings, and they're also doing maintenance, right? They're taking care of your cleaning, for example, and if things go wrong. So, and obviously this is something which can be fully booked and taken care of online. So, I just think that, we're still in a sort of cottage industry in a lot of the world, including in a lot of Europe, where it's still a sort of small landowner renting through an agency that lists on a property portal. And where we probably will be in 5 to 10 years' time is big brands who, through their brands, are representing quality, and rather like IKEA style branding in rentals. Of course, it's easier to see that happening in cities and countries where there are thousands of or hundreds of thousands of units being built. But again, I think the economics will encourage such a model to happen in many parts of the world and not just in areas like China.
Okay, good. And the last question I've got for you is, do you think there are opportunities for portals to own the real estate industry? And I'm not thinking of clearly in the Western Europe of the world, where it's very mature and everyone's got their own roles and there's a lot of strong brands. But you go further east, the Myanmars, the Cambodias, those sort of places where you can have a strong portal, very strong brand. The brand is not about finding a home. The brand could be about, this is where the real estate agents congregate around for education and training. It literally ends up clipping the ticket on every transaction that goes through a market.
I mean, for sure, when we get to markets where agencies have a small share of transactions and or do not benefit from a high reputation, which they do, which some do in many of the Western markets, then clearly the opportunity for, let's call it the marketplace, although it's more like a classifieds portal today, is huge. And I think we can see all sorts of collaborative models working with agents rather than the brokerages which employ them or which used to employ them. But I can very much imagine that in some markets there will be platforms which have, as you suggested, a take in many of the transactions, especially the simple ones and the ones which can be done in a fairly standardized way. And then the sort of the more high end, maybe still will be a more curated experience, rather like tailoring, right? It's a sort of similar kind of analogy.
Yeah, and because I've always thought that in those markets, there's got to be an opportunity for someone to own not only the marketing process, but the sales process and the execution process. Do you think that they should be taking that extra leap forward and just position themselves in the middle of the industry today?
I think that again, it's all about access to capital. But if you can fund it, then the upside is huge. I think the one question mark is: are there any parts of that, for example, the registry or the title transfer process, which the state or a regulator will want to own or at least very strongly influence?
Yes.
But if one can even offer to take to become a shareholder in a digitization of land records, there may be different ways that a platform can position itself very well to have access to the necessary data to make end-to-end transactions happen. But I totally agree with you. I think we're going to see again far more innovation in let's call them lower GDP per capita markets, and I think Southeast Asia has some very interesting ones. And I just generally don't think that subscription-based classifieds for agencies, it's a future-proof model, right? And so there's no point it's rather like bringing internet to Myanmar by fixed cable, because that's the way it started in Europe. It just wouldn't make sense, right? You want to leapfrog a couple of generations of technology, and I think we'll see the same in the way transactions happen, as long as the authorities don't put too much red tape in the way. Assuming they don't, then I think we can see some very interesting stuff in the coming months and years.
Malcolm, thank you. As always, a pleasure to chat. So fantastic insights, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. A pleasure
Okay.
talking to you.